Welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you are ready to get your hands dirty today.
Metaphorically speaking, of course.
Of course.
Though looking at the source material we have on the table, it does feel a little bit like we just dug it out of a time capsule buried somewhere in the Nevada desert.
It really does. Usually on this show, we are parsing through, clean digital PDFs, recent academic papers, maybe a breaking news article from a tech blog. But
This is different.
this is something else entirely. We are looking at a document that claims to be a technical manual, but it honestly looks more like a piece of pop art from a 1950s fever dream.
It really does.
We are analyzing the OTC Enterprises, Inc. manual, written by a man named Otis T. Carr.
And I have to say, calling it a manual is almost setting the listener up for failure. When you hear manual, you think,
Yeah.
Step 1, insert screw A into slot B.
Right, you think IKEA instructions.
Exactly. You think clarity. You think step by step.
A simple guide.
This document is, well, it's a chimera. It's part stock prospectus for potential investors, it's part philosophical manifesto, and it's part advanced physics textbook from an alternate dimension.
And you can feel the era it came from. It was published in 1957.
Right at the absolute peak of the atomic age.
Yeah.
The space race, all of that optimism. And you can feel that aesthetic just screaming off the page.
Let's describe it for you, because the visual language is actually part of the argument Carr is making. This thing isn't just typed in standard black and white,
No, not at all. It is printed in blue and red ink.
which immediately makes it look less like a legal or technical document and more like, I don't know, a religious text.
Or maybe a 3D comic book without the glasses.
Yeah.
And there's a specific reason for that. Carr was, and you see this throughout the whole text, he was obsessed with polarity.
Positive and negative.
North and south,
Yeah.
male and female. The red and the blue ink itself is trying to tell you that everything in the universe is a binary interaction. He's encoding his entire theory into the typography before you even read a single word.
And then you get to the diagrams. We've got these architectural sketches of buildings that look like they belong in the Jetsons, spiraling towers, glass domes, these very optimistic mid-century modernist structures.
Right.
And then the star of the show, the OTC-X1.
The circular foil spacecraft.
To me, and I think to anyone looking at these schematics, it looks like a flying saucer. Straight up.
It is the archetypal saucer.
If you asked a kid in 1950 to draw a UFO, this is exactly what they would draw. A central dome, a sloping rim, maybe some spinning lights.
It's got all the hallmarks. But here is the mission for today, and it's a tricky one. It is incredibly easy to look at Otis Carr, a man who claimed to invent a fourth-dimensional vehicle in the late 50s and just write him off as a con man.
Or a science fiction writer.
Or a science fiction writer, yeah. And history hasn't exactly been kind to him. The ship didn't exactly launch publicly.
No, and there were some serious legal issues, which we can probably touch on later.
It did not fly in the public eye, no. And we aren't here to rewrite history or to tell you that there's a secret base on the moon full of these things.
Okay.
But we also aren't here to just debunk it and laugh it off. We're going to play a different game today. We are going to be translators.
Translators. What language are we translating from, and what are we translating to?
We are translating Carr speak into modern engineering. Carr speaks in a very specific, very esoteric code. He uses words like God, sacred geometry, aether, and hatching the atom.
Words that make a modern scientist's skin crawl?
They really do. To a modern ear, that sounds mystical. It sounds like magic. But my argument, and what I want to explore today, is that if you swap those words for modern engineering and physics terms, if you swap aether for quantum vacuum or sacred geometry for field topology, the text suddenly stops being nonsense.
And it starts looking like what?
It starts looking like a coherent, albeit incredibly radical, physics theory.
So we're going to treat this strictly as a technical artifact. We're going to reverse engineer the logic of the machine, regardless of whether the actual hardware ever worked.
Exactly. Even if the hardware never flew an inch, the software, the thinking behind it, is fascinatingly consistent. It's a closed logical loop. So let's see if we can understand how he thought this thing should fly.
I love that approach. So let's start where Carr starts. He doesn't begin with an engine schematic. He doesn't begin with fuel or thrust calculations.
No. He begins with the shape of the entire universe.
The manual opens with this massive, sweeping assertion: there is only sacred geometry. And specifically, he is completely obsessed with one shape,
The sphere.
The sphere. I have the quote here. On the smallest level, beyond the atom, all things are the sphere.
And this is the foundational axiom of the whole manual. If you don't buy this, you won't buy the engine, you won't buy the propulsion system, nothing else works without it.
So why the sphere? Why not a cube or a pyramid?
Well, think about it in a practical engineering sense. Think about deep-sea engineering, a submarine. Why are they cylindrical or spherical?
Because of the immense water pressure, it crushes anything with corners.
Right. The pressure distributes evenly over a curve.
Yeah.
If you have a square submarine, the corners become weak points. All the stress of the ocean concentrates right there, and they'll implode. Carr views the entire universe itself as a high-pressure environment.
Okay, hold on. High pressure. But space is a vacuum.
Yeah.
It's empty. It's the absence of pressure. That's like physics 101.
Ah, see, and that is the trap. That is the 20th century mindset versus the Carr mindset. And this is our first act of translation.
Okay.
Carr challenges the very definition of a vacuum. He says that if you take a sphere and you pump out all the air and you remove every single atom of matter, you don't have nothing.
You have a vacuum.
You have what he calls a true vacuum. But he says that vacuum is not empty. He says it is full of a substance he calls ether.
Okay, we have to pause here. Because ether is a bit of a dirty word in science, isn't it? The famous Michelson-Morley experiment back in the 1880s supposedly proved the ether doesn't exist. Light doesn't need a medium to travel through.
It doesn't need a physical medium to be dragged through.
Correct. So is Carr just ignoring Einstein? Is he ignoring 70 years of established physics?
Well, yes and no. This is where we have to put on our translator hats.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right that the luminiferous aether, which was thought to be this sort of stationary, invisible gas that the Earth blows through like wind, was disproved.
Right.
But let's fast forward to today. What does quantum field theory say about empty space?
It talks about the quantum vacuum.
And is the quantum vacuum empty?
No. From what I understand, it's seizing. It's full of virtual particles.
It's incredibly dense. It's a roiling sea of virtual particles popping in and out of existence literally trillions of times a second. It has what we call zero-point energy. There is a measurable energy density in what we perceive as nothingness.
The Casimir effect is proof of that, right?
Precisely. So when Carr says ether is the nothing in between and describes it as an information field or everywhere and nowhere all at once, he is actually aligning closer to modern quantum mechanics than the rigid, empty space classical physics of the 1950s.
So he's basically saying space isn't a void, it's a fluid. It's a soup.
It's a pressurized ocean.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely crucial for the ship, because if space is truly empty, the only way to move is to throw stuff out the back of your ship.
A rocket.
Exactly. Action, reaction. Newton's third law. You throw hot gas that way, you move this way. It's brute force.
But if space is an ocean,
then you don't need a rocket. You need a submarine. You need a propeller. You need a way to manipulate the pressure of the fluid around you. Carr calls this aether dynamics. He believes that if you use the shape of the sphere, you can interact with this background energy field.
that distinction really changes how you read the whole manual. He has this one quote: "We are in fact all one experience faceted over a universe." It sounds religious, but in this context, he seems to be implying that the machine isn't separate from the space it flies in, it's part of it.
It's a continuity. The ship is just a denser part of the ether, and the manual emphasizes over and over that the center of the sphere is hollow. He believes that by creating a geometric vacuum inside the ship, you attract the aether. You create a kind of sinkhole that the universe tries to fill, and that flow of aether into the vacuum is what creates energy.
It's a very hydraulic way of thinking about space. It's all about flow and pressure.
Hydraulic is the perfect word. He treats electromagnetism like a fluid.
Okay, so we have the ocean, the aether. Now we need the propeller, or the pump. This brings us to the engine of the craft.
The core technology.
The manual describes this device called the Utron electric accumulator.
The Utron. The heart of the machine. And probably the single most controversial and confusing part of the entire design.
I'm looking at the diagram on page. Looks like page 14 of the source material. This thing is bizarre. Carr describes it as a molecular shell. But visually, it looks like two spinning tops or two cones glued together at their wide part.
A double cone.
Uh,
Or what engineers would call a biconical shape.
Right, but then the manual throws this absolute curveball. It says the Utron is completely square.
I know, that one line has confused researchers for decades.
I mean, I'm looking at a picture of a cone, which is definitely round, and the text says it's square. Is he just bad at geometry, or is this some kind of riddle?
It has to be a riddle. It's a geometric paradox. And I spent a long time staring at this, trying to figure out what an engineer would mean by calling a rotating cone square. He says, a square that rotates.
Okay, well, if you spin a square on its axis really fast, its outer edge traces a circle.
Exactly. So physically, from the outside, it acts circular. But think about the cross-section. If you slice this double cone right down the middle, from top to bottom, what shape do you see?
You'd see two triangles base to base. Or if you look at the whole slice, it's a diamond.
And a diamond is just a tilted square.
Okay, I see that. It's a square on its corner, but why does that matter? What's the functional significance of its cross-section being square?
Because Carr isn't talking about aerodynamics here. He's talking about magnetic field interaction. Imagine this Utron is spinning at thousands of RPMs inside a ring of magnets.
Okay, I'm picturing it. A spinning top inside a magnetic donut.
A standard electric motor uses round coils, smooth, circular windings. They produce sine waves, smooth, rolling hills and valleys of energy. Carr seems to want a square interaction. He wants the magnetic field lines to hit the flat surface of that cone and break sharply at the edge.
Like a pulse.
Exactly. In signal processing, a square wave is incredibly powerful. It's an instantaneous on-off signal. It's harsh. It creates massive harmonics.
So by square, he might be talking about the quality of the energy wave it produces, not the physical object itself.
That's my primary interpretation. He's building a machine to pulse the ether, to hit it like a drum, not just stir it gently with a spoon. He wants a sharp, percussive impact on the field.
And he calls it an accumulator.
He does.
Which is an old-timey word for a battery. My grandfather used to call car batteries accumulators.
Correct. But think about how a normal battery works. It's chemical, acid, lead plates. It sits there, and it stores potential chemical energy statically. This is what I would call an inertial battery.
Inertial, as in a flywheel.
Precisely. You put energy in to spin it up. It holds that energy as motion, as kinetic energy, but because it's also a conductor and it's spinning inside a powerful magnetic field, it's also acting like a capacitor, storing an electrical charge.
So it's a spinning capacitor flywheel hybrid.
A spinning capacitor flywheel hybrid that is geometrically designed to output a square wave pulse into the quantum vacuum.
That is a wildly complex piece of theoretical engineering.
It is. The closest thing we have in reality is a homopolar generator, the old Faraday disk from the 1800s. But Faraday's disk was flat. It was a 2D plate. Carr seems to have taken that basic concept and expanded it into 3 dimensions. He took the flat disk and made it into a sphere or 2 cones to try to capture and shape the field in 3D space.
It really feels like he's trying to build a machine that mimics the shape of a planet.
That is exactly it. He says it explicitly in the text. The Earth is a giant Utron. It spins, it has a magnetic field, it moves through space. He's just trying to build a baby one. He believes that if you can match the geometry of the Earth, you can tap into the same fundamental energy source that keeps the Earth spinning.
Which brings us to the main event, the propulsion itself, the Corrado gravity motor.
The Corrado.
I love the names in this manual. It's so of its time. Corrado sounds like an Italian sports car from the 60s.
It does. It's a portmanteau of his name, car, and rotation. He really wanted to brand everything.
So this is the propulsion system for the spaceship, the OTC-X1. The manual calls it a circular foil spacecraft. And the core concept here is fourth-dimensional flight. Now, usually when we talk about the fourth dimension in science, we are talking about time.
Right, space-time.
But Carr has a different take.
He does. He writes, pressure creates motion, and motion creates pressure. Motion is dimensionally fourth. He's linking the fourth dimension directly to the control of inertial forces. He's saying that if you can control the pressure of gravity, you have mastered the fourth dimension.
And how does the OTC-X1 do that? It's all about rotation, right?
Counter-rotation, to be specific. The diagrams clearly show the ship isn't just one big spinning disk. It has a central core where the Utrons are spinning in one direction at a very high speed, and then there's an outer shell, or another large component, spinning in the opposite direction.
Why counter-rotation? Why not just spin the whole thing like a Frisbee?
Well, stability, for one. If you have a single spinning rotor, like on a helicopter, the body of the helicopter wants to spin the other way.
Conservation of angular momentum.
Exactly, Newton's third law. That's why you need a tail rotor to fight it. But if you have 2 massive components spinning in opposite directions, you can cancel out that torque So the central cabin, the place where the pilots sit, can remain perfectly still.
That makes sense. Otherwise, the pilots would be very, very dizzy.
And very, very sick. Precisely. But Carr implies something much deeper is happening than just passenger comfort. He talks about creating an inertial system. He says inertial systems in the gravity field manifested in the two poles of natural magnetism.
Okay, let's unpack that. That is a dense sentence.
It's very dense. An inertial frame in physics is basically a viewpoint that isn't accelerating. You're sitting in a chair right now. You're in an inertial frame relative to the room. But Carr claims this ship generates its own gravity.
He says it becomes a miniature planet.
Exactly. And this is the key aha moment of the entire manual. He argues that the planet Earth flies through space not because it has a rocket engine, but because it has mass and rotation that creates an equilibrium with the sun's gravitational field.
It's in a stable orbit.
He wants the ship to do the same thing, but on a local scale. If the ship can create its own incredibly strong, localized gravitational or magnetic field, it creates its own local environment.
I think I need an analogy here.
Okay. Imagine a fly buzzing around inside a moving car. The car's doing 70 miles per hour down the highway. Does the fly feel the 70-mile-per-hour wind rushing past it?
No, because the air inside the car is moving along with the car. The fly is in its own little world.
Exactly. The fly is in a local inertial frame. Carr wants to turn the spaceship into the car. He wants to create a bubble of gravity, magnetism, and ether so that the passengers inside are the fly.
So if I'm a passenger inside the OTC X1 and the ship suddenly accelerates to 5,000 miles per hour.
You wouldn't feel it. That's the claim. Because you, the ship, and the space immediately around the ship are all one system. You are inside the zero point of this artificial planet. The ship isn't pushing against the air. It's moving its entire localized field with it. You are strictly in the ship's gravity, not Earth's.
That would explain the kind of UFO behavior people report. Instant stops, 90-degree turns at incredible speeds that would turn a human into jelly.
Theoretically, yes. If you can actually engineer a localized inertial frame, you bypass the laws of inertia relative to the outside world. Now, can we do that? Standard physics says no, not without a mass equivalent to a small moon.
Right.
But Carr is betting that electromagnetism can be made to do the job of mass. He's trying to use high-speed spin and powerful magnetic fields to mimic the gravitational effect of a planet.
There is a mention of gravity as a push-pull. He says the ship effectively renders the Earth's field irrelevant.
Think of a helium balloon. It floats.
Right.
Why? It's not because it has an anti-gravity engine.
It's because it's less dense than the air around it. It's buoyancy.
It's buoyancy. The denser medium, the air, pushes it up. Carr is trying to create a kind of magnetic buoyancy. He wants to change the magnetic density of the ship so that the Earth's own gravitational field just spits it out, effectively.
So it's not fighting gravity, it's just becoming incompatible with it.
The perfect way to put it.
I want to pivot to energy. Because you can't just spin a heavy metal donut forever without a constant power source. Friction exists. Entropy exists. The manual has this fascinating section called Hatching the Atom.
This is one of the most poetic and interesting distinctions Carr makes. He draws a line between what he calls soft energy and hard energy.
Right. Hard energy is what we do today, nuclear fission.
He calls fission and fusion the right hand of the Almighty, destructive, explosive brute force. And he uses the analogy of an egg. If you want to get the energy out of an egg, you can smash it with a hammer.
That's fission. You break the shell, you get a mess, but you've released what's inside.
You get a mess, you get heat, you get an explosion. That is how our nuclear power plants work. We bombard uranium atoms with neutrons, we smash them, and catch the heat from the explosion.
But Carr wants to hatch the egg.
Yes. He says if you gently hatch or condition the egg, if you keep it warm, if you nurture it, it hatches on its own and produces life. It produces energy from the inside out, sustainably and without destruction.
That is a beautiful metaphor. But what does hatching an atom actually look like in a machine? What is the hammer and what is the incubator?
Well, he talks about using bismuth as a key component. Now, bismuth is a real element. It's number 83 on the periodic table. It's a heavy, brittle, silvery metal.
It's in Pepto-Bismol, right? The stomach medicine.
Yes, bismuth subsalicylate. But in physics, bismuth has a very unique property. It is the most naturally diamagnetic element.
Okay, can you explain diamagnetic one more time for the people in the back?
Sure. So if you take a strong magnet and hold it up to a piece of iron, it sticks. That's ferromagnetism, attraction. If you hold it up to, say, aluminum Nothing really happens. It pretty much ignores it.
Right.
But if you hold a strong magnet up to bismuth, the bismuth physically pushes away.
Yeah.
It creates an opposing magnetic field. It naturally fights the magnet. It repels.
So if the Earth is a giant magnet,
And your ship has major components made of bismuth,
it naturally pushes away from the Earth.
it helps. It reduces what you could call the magnetic weight. Now, in a lab setting, this force is tiny, very, very tiny. You can levitate a small flake of bismuth between powerful magnets, but you're not going to lift a car.
But Carr suggests that if you rotate it at high speed,
You amplify the effect dramatically. In physics, we have something called the gyromagnetic ratio. Spinning electrons are what create magnetism in the first place. Carr seems to think that by spinning the macro object, the entire bismuth core, you amplify that natural repulsion. He's trying to turn that tiny push into a massive shove that lifts the whole craft.
And then that leads back to the hatching idea. You aren't forcing the bismuth to do something unnatural. You are taking its inherent property, its natural tendency to say, I hate magnets, and spinning it so fast that it screams, get me away from this planet.
That is a very personified way to put it, but yes. Since the Earth is the biggest magnet nearby, the path of least resistance is up.
And this hatching implies resonance, doesn't it?
Yes. Resonance is the bridge between the mystical and the mechanical in this manual. Think of an opera singer and a wine glass. If you hit the glass with a hammer, it breaks. That's fission.
Okay.
But if you sing at exactly the right pitch,
It vibrates.
it vibrates violently. It absorbs and stores that sound energy until it shatters or until it gives that energy back as sound. Carr is suggesting that every atom has a song, a resonant frequency. If you can tune your neutrons to the specific frequency of bismuth, you can get the atom to give up its energy without smashing it to pieces.
This sounds a lot like what they call cold fusion or Lin and R low-energy nuclear reactions today.
It aligns perfectly with that entire line of thinking. The idea that there are chemical or atomic pathways to release enormous amounts of energy that don't require millions of degrees of heat. You just need the right geometry and the right frequency.
So we have the philosophical shape, the sphere, we have the engine, the neutron, we have the vehicle dynamics with counter-rotation, and the fuel source, which is resonating bismuth. But the manual also mentions, well, are they weapons or tools? There's a section on the photon gun.
Photon gun. It sounds like something straight out of Star Trek or Buck Rogers.
It does. The diagram shows a unique reaction chamber designed to accelerate mass approaching the velocity of light. But he clarifies, and this is important, that it's strictly for use outside the Earth's atmosphere.
Which implies it's more of a propulsion tool or maybe a deflector rather than a ray gun you use to zap aliens.
A deflector?
Think about it. If you were traveling in deep space at a significant fraction of the speed of light, even a grain of sand hitting your hull is like a tactical nuclear bomb. You need a way to clear the path in front of you.
So it's a deflector shield, pushing particles out of the way.
Or it could be a way to push against the solar wind for fine maneuvering. A photon gun suggests emitting light photons or maybe plasma at high velocity to create thrust. Once you're in the vacuum of space, you can't use the aether propeller anymore. You have to emit something. It's a secondary drive system.
And speaking of space, he talks a lot about the sun. He calls his system a solar battery. But looking at the diagram, he definitely isn't talking about solar panels like we have on our roofs today. There are no photovoltaic cells here.
No, absolutely not. This is a key misunderstanding people have. He claims the sun is the central power station of the solar system. But he's not talking about catching photons or visible light. He's talking about connecting to the inertial source of the sun.
Inertial source. That phrase keeps coming up again and again.
This goes right back to the aether. If the sun is a giant mass spinning in the ether, it's creating waves, ripples in the pond. Carr believes his machine is a receiver. Just like a radio doesn't generate the music, it just tunes into the broadcast station.
His solar battery tunes into the energy waves coming from the sun.
The gravitational or inertial waves, yes. It's wireless power, but on a planetary scale.
Okay, give me a modern analogy for this.
Do you use a wireless charger for your phone?
Yeah, the little pad you set it on at night.
That's inductive coupling. The pad creates an oscillating magnetic field, and a coil inside your phone catches that field and turns it back into electricity. No wires.
Okay, I'm with you.
Carr is essentially proposing long-range inductive coupling. He thinks the sun is the charging pad, and the Earth, and by extension his machine, is the phone. The magnetic field lines of the sun stretch out way past Pluto. We are sitting inside the sun's magnetic field right this second.
So we are sitting on the charging pad, but we don't have the receiver coil turned on.
Exactly. That is the perfect way to describe his theory. He thinks we are burning coal and splitting atoms to generate heat, while completely ignoring the fact that we are already plugged into a massive fusion generator, the sun, but we just haven't built the right kind of coil to step down the voltage.
And the Utron is that coil.
The Utron is the coil, and its unique shape, that square interaction, is designed to catch the specific shape of the sun's magnetic field. If the sun's field has a specific frequency or geometry, you need a geometric antenna to catch it. A flat solar panel catches light. A spherical or conical Utron catches, well, he would say ether. But a modern physicist might say magnetic flux or gravitational waves.
That actually makes a scary amount of sense. I mean, not that I think I could build one in my garage this weekend, but the internal logic holds up. It's consistent.
The logic is frighteningly consistent. That's what makes this manual so compelling. It's not just a bunch of rambling nonsense. It's a very structured, very meticulous argument based on one central premise, the existence of the aether that mainstream science discarded, but which Carr believed was the source of everything.
And he didn't come up with this in a vacuum. Pun very much intended.
No, he didn't.
The manual makes no secret of its lineage. It says, a beautiful man by the name of Nikola Tesla understands this.
He practically worships Tesla in this text. He says, and I'm quoting, everything in this technological world of ours all stems from him.
And he constructs this narrative of good versus evil here. He says Tesla had only love in his heart, but his technology was stolen by disharmony projects, which you can only assume means the military-industrial complex.
Right.
Carr frames his own work, calling his company's mission Atoms for Peace, as a reclamation of Tesla's lost peaceful technology.
He sees himself as Tesla's true heir.
But is there actual Tesla tech in here? Or is he just name-dropping a famous inventor to get credibility with investors?
It's much more than name-dropping.
Yeah.
It's a remix. Think about Tesla's greatest hits. What is his most famous invention?
The AC induction motor.
Right, which runs basically every appliance in your house. And how does it work? It works by using rotating magnetic fields. You don't physically touch the rotor. You spin the field around it, and the rotor just chases the field. So Carr takes that core concept, rotating magnetic fields, and he combines it with Tesla's other obsession, high-frequency, high-voltage resonance, the stuff he did with the Tesla coil. The Utron is basically a rotating Tesla coil inside a powerful magnetic field. It's a hybrid of Tesla's two biggest ideas.
I see. So he's saying Tesla figured out the rotation and he figured out the frequency, but he never put them together inside a spacecraft.
Exactly. And let's not forget, Tesla himself also claimed to be working on a flying machine later in his life, and he spoke very openly about obtaining energy from the ambient medium. Carr is essentially claiming to be the guy who finally drew up the schematic that Tesla never got around to publishing.
Okay, let's do a thought experiment. This is the deep dive skunkworks. We have an unlimited budget, we have the best machine shop in the world, and we have this manual. We are going to try to build an OTC X1 today in 2026. What do we need?
Okay, first you need a very, very high-end machine shop. The manual emphasizes geometry above all else. If your sphere isn't perfectly spherical, if your Utron isn't perfectly balanced down to the microgram, the vibrations at 10 or 20,000 RPM will tear the machine apart.
So we're talking CNC milling, laser measurements, the works.
We're talking aerospace-grade precision. We are likely creating custom molds for the outer foil, probably out of a non-magnetic composite. We need to machine these biconical Utrons to micrometer precision.
What about materials?
We need bismuth, a lot of it, and very pure. We need high-purity, oxygen-free copper for all the windings. And we need to construct these Utrons. Based on the diagrams, we would probably construct them out of a conductive shell, maybe aluminum or copper, with a hollow center, or perhaps a specific chemical core if we take the battery analogy, literally.
Okay, so we built it, it's assembled. We have the central core, the counter-rotating outer shell, the ring of powerful electromagnets. We're in a desert test site. We flip the switch. What happens?
In a standard physics model, you have a very heavy, very expensive, and very dangerous flywheel.
Dangerous.
Extremely dangerous. It spins up, it hums, it creates a massive amount of wind. It probably gets very hot due to air friction and electrical resistance, and it sits there.
It doesn't fly.
It doesn't fly. Not unless we are missing a variable. And this is the crucial missing link in the manual. Carr talks about tuning. He says the machine must be conditioned.
Like a musical instrument.
Exactly like a musical instrument. If you build a violin, it's just wood and string. It's dead object. It doesn't make music until you tune it to the correct frequencies. Carr implies that the rotational speed, the magnetic field strength, and the electrical frequency must all be harmonically coupled to the atomic frequency of the materials being used.
Specifically the bismuth.
Specifically the bismuth. If you just spin it at a random speed, nothing happens. You have to hit the resonant frequency of the local gravity field or the aether or whatever you want to call it.
So the most likely failure mode for our skunkworks team is that we build the hardware perfectly, but we just don't know the song to play.
That's it. Or, strictly speaking, we don't know the software, the exact frequency modulation required. Without that connection to the aether, it's just a kinetic sculpture.
But could anything happen, even a little bit?
Well, there is a real, albeit controversial, phenomenon called the Biefeld-Brown effect, where high-voltage capacitors have been shown to produce a tiny, tiny amount of thrust. It's possible that a spinning high-voltage system like this could demonstrate a measurable weight reduction. Maybe it gets 1% lighter when it's running.
Which would still be an incredible engineering breakthrough.
It would rewrite physics, even if it doesn't shoot off to Mars.
It feels like the difference between a radio that's tuned to static versus a radio that's tuned to a clear broadcast signal. The hardware is the same, but the result is totally different.
That is the perfect analogy. Carr believed he had found the frequency of the universe's broadcast station.
The manual ends with a vision of what this technology brings to humanity. It's not just about flying saucers for a select few, it's a completely utopian vision.
Peace and plenty, he calls it. He has these wonderful sketches of the city of the future, the Corrado power generating plant. It's this clean, beautiful, modernist cylinder. There are no smokestacks, no noise, no pollution, just silent, rotating ether turbines, providing free, abundant energy for everyone.
It really was a beautiful dream, a world where energy is like air-free and available everywhere, no more fighting over oil.
And that's the appeal, isn't it? That's why we are still reading this manual 70 years later. It promises that the scarcity we fight over oil, coal, land is artificial. It suggests that if we just understood the sacred geometry of our world, we could tap into an infinite source.
There is a line near the end of the manual that really stuck with me. He writes, "You are only possible because God is. The whole is oneness."
It connects right back to that consciousness element he hints at in the beginning.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder. In physics, we are always looking for the missing variable in the math. We look for a new coefficient, a new particle, something we can measure in a lab. But Carr and Tesla and a lot of these outlier thinkers seem to imply that the missing variable is us, the operator, the consciousness observing the experiment.
That is the provocative thought for the day, isn't it? In quantum mechanics, we've had to accept that the observer affects the experiment. The act of measuring changes the outcome. Carr takes that principle to the macro level. He implies that you cannot build a gravity motor with hate or greed in your heart, that the machine is an extension of the operator's intent.
So if you try to weaponize it, the ether rejects you. The tuning fails.
Perhaps. Or perhaps the geometry of the universe is fundamentally linked to the geometry of consciousness. If we start to view the universe not as empty space with dead rocks floating in it, but as a dense, living field of information, a mind of God, if you want to use that term, then propulsion is no longer about explosion. It's about connection.
You mentioned swimming through the information field.
Exactly. Instead of fighting gravity with brute force, you harmonize with it. You stop pushing, and you start flowing.
Whether you believe Otis Carr was a visionary physicist or a consummate dreamer, you have to admit, the universe looks a lot more interesting when you imagine that everything is a sphere, and the empty space between things is actually full of untapped potential.
It certainly beats thinking of it as a cold, dead, empty void.
Expert, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Otis Carr manual. It's been a trip to the fourth dimension, and I think my brain is still spinning.
It's always a pleasure. Keep looking up.
And keep asking questions. We'll see you next time.